Hi everybody, Scott Marsh here. I'm very excited to start this video series, and this is our first one. It's going to be called All Things Music, and as the title suggests, we're going to be talking about all kinds of topics involving music. We're going to be talking about education, talking about performances, practicing, rehearsing, theory and composition, recorded music, and all genres, styles, types of music as well. So I'm very excited about this being our first segment as a part of this video series. And I am very honored to have a good friend of mine here and trumpet player extraordinaire, Mr. Tim Coyne, on as my first guest. And so, Tim, for those who don't really know you all that well, I want you to just say a couple words about who you are.
Well, thank you, Scott, for having me. I'm honored to be here and as the first guest. I think it'll be a great series. I'm looking forward to seeing all of it. I am a trumpet player here in Northeast Ohio. I've been a working professional for, at least 20 years, 25, over 25 years, just in this area. And I play all styles on trumpet, mostly jazz, but also a lot of Latin, classical, pop, rock, blues. Jack of all trades, master of none is how I describe myself. And I am a member of a few different bands permanently, including my own quartet, the Dan Angotti Jazz Rock Orchestra, or Danjo, Grupo Fuego, a merengue and salsa band in Cleveland, and Ahina Ma, which is a Latin jazz group, sometimes a 7-piece, sometimes a 5-piece. And then I sub with several different groups around the Akron, Cleveland area on a regular basis. Oh, and member of a new band that just formed called Perfect Choice.
Cool. Great.
So
great.
And I work, we're filming actually at Kent State today, and I work here. I am a staff member in Human Resources. So I've been here for a few years doing that.
Cool. Yeah. And so in these video series, as I have a guest on, we're going to be talking just about a certain topic of music or a topic, and then some subtopics within. So if you guys out there whoever watches this, if you have any suggestions of topics you want us to talk about, please put them in the comments section below. Or if there's a certain guest that you'd like me to have on talking about a specific topic, please put that down below, and I'll do my best to get those in the rotation and get those folks on. So Tim and I have played together quite a bit, we talk a lot during and after the gigs, and one of the things that we've kind of just brushed on, I think, and then why I wanted to have him on was this particular topic. So today's topic is gig or concert etiquette, and so we're going to be talking about gig etiquette from a player's standpoint and what we do as performers. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the audience as well, as far as audience etiquette when you show up to a gig to go see one. So we're going to throw out some scenarios here and just talk about what we would do in those scenarios. And some of this may be common knowledge to some folks, but I have seen, and I don't know if Tim has also, but seen and heard of some things happening even recently in the last 6 months that were just kind of odd. So in regards to this kind of thing, so we're going to talk about that. So the first scenario is you get called for a big band job, and let's just say it's a last minute call and the leader doesn't really have time to tell you a whole lot about it. So he calls you, says, "Tim, can you come play this job?" And you agree. He tells you the time and the place. You show up. But you don't know what book you're playing. You're not sure what you're supposed to be playing. You're not even really sure. You may not know who's on the gig. You may know some people. You may not. You don't know who you're subbing for. So how would you handle that situation?
Well, the first thing I would do, if possible, when I got to the gig, and speak with the leader, if possible. Sometimes the leaders are very busy. They're organizing things. They're getting set up. They're talking to audience members, because being the leader sometimes means also being the the person everybody wants to talk to.
Sometimes they're the last one there.
Yeah, sometimes they're usually busy. So, but if possible, I will approach the leader and ask, what book would you like me to play tonight? If that's not possible, I will seek out a member of the band I know. Hopefully there's a few cats in the band that I know, especially if it's in my section, and say, hey, the leader called me, I'm subbing tonight, but I'm not sure what book I'm playing. Do you know what book needs to be covered, or what book should I play?
Right.
So that's, just you can be nervous, just asking.
Sure.
Because you're filling in, but ask questions and be flexible. That's probably the most important thing. And play what they want you to play. Don't say, oh, well, I want to play lead, or I want to play the solo chair. Play the part that needs covered.
Right. Okay. Right. And I 100% agree. Show up, start asking questions, find out what's going on, and don't be afraid to step up and say, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. Which book am I supposed to play?
Right.
And again, some of this stuff may seem to the listeners here of this video series like, hey, this is common knowledge, but again, I've come across some things, and we're just putting it out there. So the second scenario, very similar. You get called for a big band job. However, this time you know exactly who you're subbing for. So they call and they say, you're subbing for this person, and that's the lead trumpet player. And you know that. Everybody knows it. And that's who you're subbing for. So inherently you think, well, then I'm playing lead. And so you show up to the gig, prepared to play the lead chair, and somebody else shows up on the gig as well who you may feel is better suited for the book that you were told to play. How do you approach that?
Well, I assume you're talking about like another sub, or maybe it's a band thrown together kind of in the last few days,
or maybe
not a regular member.
Well,
they're playing their own book.
It could be in the regards to you know who you're subbing for, but you may not know everybody else on the band.
Okay.
Right, so you know that person plays lead, like the leader tells you, oh, this person is a lead player, I need you to sub.
Right.
You show up and either there's a full-time member or and there are differences here, and you can talk about this, a full-time member or another sub who you feel once you get there and see who's there, maybe better suited for that book. How do you approach that?
In that case, I would probably check with that player first to see if he or she would be comfortable playing the book that I was supposed to play.
Uh-huh.
Are you, saying, hey, I know you can handle this better than I can. You probably know more of the tunes than I do. Would you mind taking this? And if that's okay with them, I would approach the leader to make sure it's okay with the leader.
Sure.
Because it's their show.
Right, and because they called you.
Right. If they, sometimes certain parts may pay more than another.
That's true.
So if you're, came in and you end up playing third instead of lead, what should you make?
Right.
So,
maybe you're not right.
Right. So I hadn't thought of that until now.
Yeah.
But yeah, check with the leader and say,
Sure.
Hey, Joe knows this book, or no, he's a better lead player than I am, or
sure.
He's a better soloist than I am. Would it be okay if he took this book and I took the one that he was going to play?
But regardless of the situation, what I'm hearing from you and kind of how I feel is that you at least offer it to that person.
Right.
If you feel like they're a cut above, you at least say, would you like to? You at least would go through that step of offering it to the person.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If I'm going to play, like I get called to play lead. And Joe Miller shows up. He's the other trumpet player. I'm like, oh, well, Joe's a fantastic player.
Right.
He should probably be playing lead, and I can do something else. Or we'll split it.
Right. Share a little bit or whatever.
Yeah. We just communicate.
At least offer.
Right. At least offer.
Be courteous.
Right.
Okay. So this last scenario is, again, these are all very similar, but now you're on a big band job. You're in the band. You're a full-time member of the band. You're playing the same book every week or month, whatever, often the band gigs. And somebody else subs in on your section, And I know some of this subbing thing that we're talking about is different for trumpets and trombones than it is for saxes. Obviously, if you're a sax sub, you don't just show up with all your saxophones. They usually tell you you're playing alto, tenor, bari. I understand that. So it's a little different for saxophones, but you're playing a lead chair, a solo chair, or whatever, second, third, and somebody shows up as a sub for one of your section mates, and again, they're kind of, I didn't know Wayne Bergeron was walking in the door. So what do you do in that situation? Do you do the same thing, or do you just say, hey, this is our band, this is my book, and I just play, or do you say, hey, I'd love for you to come play? I mean, how do you handle that?
That's a tricky one because you want to play your book, especially if it's a lead or a solo book. You want to play because you enjoy that,
sure.
And that's part of your job. And that's why you have it too, because you can handle it. But you get somebody in like that, I think you should, ask them if they want to maybe not do the whole book the whole night, but play some of it, switch back and forth. And we have that luxury in our sections usually. Sax is maybe not so much
because of the instruments,
right? Because the instruments and how they're seated, we can move around a little bit more in the trumpet section.
Sure.
But yeah, I would definitely. If Wayne Bergeron showed up at my gig, I would love to hear him play lead instead of me.
Right.
I think everybody would.
Everybody would. No, yeah. So
if Sean Jones shows up and I'm on the solo chair, I'm going to say, "Hey, Sean, you want to play? You want to play this?
Switch changes.
I'll just switch parts. Sean, come and play this.
Absolutely.
No, actually, I say Mr. Jones because I don't know him.
Right. Right. So again, the whole underlining kind of thing for this is just be courteous with each other, and know the people around you, right? And know who they are and what they're doing, and make sure that you're aware of your surroundings. So,
well, the one of the best things, we may touch upon this later, but one of the best things you can do is check your ego at the door. So absolutely. I get to play with some really good trumpet players in the area, and with each other, there's no ego.
Right.
Whether I'm playing with Joe or with Scott or Mike or anybody else, all these other Chuck and all these great players around, we're communicating and we have fun playing together rather than I can play this better than you. It's not like that.
Right. All right. So moving to a small group scenario, and this has to do more with soloing, and this, even though this is more of a jazz type topic, I guess it could be a rock topic as well, as far as playing solos, guitar solos, drum solos, whatever. You get called for a small group job. It's somebody else's gig. You get called to sub in. When it's time for you to blow, take your solo, do you just take as many courses as you like, and just say, hey, we're all here to just play? Or do you kind of pay attention to what the leader's doing? Oh, he took 5 courses on that. I'm going to take 5 or less. At most, I'll take 6. Do you kind of tailor it to that, to what he's doing or she's doing? Or do you just kind of do your own thing?
That's a good question. I would tend to mimic what the leader does, or less.
Or less.
Okay. I feel like if we're talking a blues tune, 12 bars, and it's a fairly quick pace.
Right.
Take 4 or 5 choruses, maybe if I feel comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
But if the leader took 10, I'm not necessarily going to take 10.
Right.
Or 5.
Right.
Just depends on what I'm comfortable with.
Right.
But yeah, try to listen and figure out what's going on, because you don't want to overstay your welcome. Right. In a tune.
Right.
So it's also good to ask. You could always ask before the gig, hey, do you take a certain number of choruses, or does it matter?
Sure.
Would you prefer I only play a couple?
Right.
It's
always ask, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. There's some bands people only take 2 choruses. And
That's what you do.
Yeah, that's what everybody does.
Yeah.
So that's the way they do it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's how they do it, and then you should follow suit.
Sure. Okay. Now let's kind of reverse that situation. So you're now the leader of the combo, the small group, and you call somebody to sub in. And what do you do if they kind of do their own thing, or does it matter to you? Do you get offended by that, or if they just kind of do their own thing? Is it bothersome to you, or are you cool with it?
That's a pretty delicate question,
right?
Because we've all been in those situations where like one guy is playing too long,
right,
and you want to move on. If you're the leader, you're I'm assuming that you're the one calling. We're going to go back to the head, or we'll start back up at the bridge, etc. So you might have a little bit of power to
manipulate the situation.
Yeah, but
sure.
In general, if somebody is playing too much, maybe say, either during the break or before the next tune, hey, tone it down a little bit, or let's give everybody a chance, and we want to play a certain number of songs, and, we don't want to play one for 10 minutes.
Right.
Right. With respect and, friendliness.
Right.
But
yeah.
Just, make the point that let's give everybody a chance.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hard situation.
It's very delicate. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very tough to look at somebody who could be a good friend of yours, or at least somebody you know well, and say, let me take a few less choruses without offending them. You hope you don't. But and again.
But it is your band.
But it is your group, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And again, some of this hopefully would be some common knowledge, but not always, and that's why we're talking about it.
Right.
So another scenario here, this could be a small group or a big band job, either way. You're a sub. Is it okay that you make suggestions to the leader, to other players in your section? Does it matter if you know the people or not? Or should you just show up and just close your mouth and play your book?
I think it really does depend on the scene right there, because if it's a big band, and in a big band, I'm more likely to not say a word, just play my part. However, if I'm among friends, especially if the leader's a friend of mine, I might be inclined to make suggestion, or at least to the section mate say, hey, we're going to play, let's do a forte piano and a crescendo on this note.
Right, so a musical suggestion, especially
Right.
if you're playing like the lead book.
Right. If I'm leading the section.
Right.
Even
Right.
if I'm not the regular guy, I might say, oh, I know this tune, let's play this note fat, and we're going to stick this one.
Sure.
And if you even have time to do that.
Right.
But as far as suggestions to the leader, usually no. I wouldn't say anything unless I'm just really comfortable in this situation.
Right.
Because it's not my place.
Right.
I just came in to play the book, to fill in for somebody else.
Right.
And, especially if you say, oh, we're going to play Mercy, Mercy, Mercy. Well, let's take it up a few clicks. Well, maybe there's a sax solo, like a killer sax solo in that song, and not everybody is going to be able to take it a few clicks faster.
Right.
That's going to ruin the groove.
Right.
It's going to ruin it for everybody. So
Right.
more apt to keep my mouth shut and just play.
Sure.
In a small group, again, depends. Do I know the guys? Do I not?
Right.
Am I comfortable? If I don't know most of the guys, or if I'm uncomfortable, I will just play.
Yeah.
If they ask me what I'd like to play, sure, I will throw out a few tunes. Oh, I'd like to play, Take the A Train, or
Sure.
something that, I know that everybody's going to know,
Right.
for one thing, not some obscure tune that people might be sight reading,
Right.
and they may not be comfortable doing that.
Right.
But as far as maybe how to begin or end a song or other things,
Sure.
I may make a few suggestions if I'm comfortable, and if I think that everybody can handle it.
Or if you subbed on the band often enough.
Right, if I've done it often enough. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm more apt to just shut up and play.
Sure. Okay. All right. And I agree with that as well. I think that sometimes people will show up to a gig and they'll ask questions and ask if we can do this or do that or do this, and I understand we're all there to have fun and play, but I just have never understood that. I don't know if I've ever done that. Maybe I have, and maybe somebody out there watching will say, "Oh, you're such a liar. You do that all the time." And I hope not. But I would like to think that if I get called for a job, I play the book and I play that book and I don't say anything. If it's a small group, again, that's a little bit different. But if they ask, hey, if there's a tune I'll play, yeah, let's do it on Green Dolphin Street, or whatever,
Right.
So I was just those are two things that I kind of just wanted to touch on with that as well. So. All right, now, so this next thing is not really a scenario, but it's just a kind of a small topic here. Say you go to a gig, doesn't matter what size the group is, but the audience is either A, very small, maybe even smaller than the band itself, which we probably all have done before, or they're just not paying attention. And let's say it's not necessarily a place where you knew you were being hired for them not to pay attention to you. It's not some cocktail party where you knew you were just background noise. It's at a club or wherever, and they're just either not paying attention or they're a very small number. Is it okay at that time to kind of say, even though we prepared this set list or these specific tunes and we were going to do some things, let's just kind of dump that stuff and do whatever we want? Or just turn it into more of a jam session? Is it okay to do those things, or should you still try to put on the show as if there was 150 people there, 200 people there, fully focused on you?
I think it's another great question because we've all been there and we've maybe struggled with that too. Personally, I am a little bit more inclined to go outside our comfort zone and play some material that we're not familiar with. Some people might call that a paid rehearsal. But to me, it's a little different because I firmly believe that if you don't push yourself, you don't improve. And it's one thing to sit in a practice room and go over the changes or something, whatever, practice something difficult on your own. But it's another to be with a live group trying to play a tune that you're not familiar with or maybe none of you are familiar with.
Right.
But I think you have to push yourself to grow. So if you want to grow as a musician, even with a great audience in front of you, you should be pushing the envelope just a little. But in a case where there's hardly anybody there, and even the people there aren't paying attention, I'll mix it up a little bit, get away from whatever the set list was, and call a couple tunes that are going to push our boundaries.
Sure.
And I might play a little bit more outside and outside my own comfort zone in those cases.
Sure.
And I don't think it's disrespectful to the audience. I think, for the people who are listening, they might even appreciate it more because you're really going for it.
Right, yeah. And that's I agree with you on that, although I also struggle with it because I feel like, this is why we're here. If we came here with the intention to perform and put on a show, and even though there's only a few here and they may not be paying attention, we should still do that. I struggle with that, and I'm not going to say that like it feels like a musical integrity thing, although I'm not saying that you're wrong because I also agree with you. It's just one of those things I'm on the fence with, and so it becomes tough, and
well, we've talked about knowing your audience.
Right.
And the time and place. If you're playing a jazz club, they expect to hear boundary pushing music or solos. If you're playing a cocktail party for somebody's the wedding hour, the cocktail hour at somebody's wedding reception, no, not the time or place.
Right. So know your audience, know what's going on, and I'll briefly say this, and this we talked about this earlier, is my example for that is always high school marching bands who do competitions. They work on one show, they rehearse on one show almost all year, and they're so focused on these competitions that they forget the whole reason why they're there, and why they exist as an organization. It's because of the football team. If the school didn't have football, they wouldn't have a marching band. I'm sure that you could find some examples across the nation that have a competition marching band that doesn't have a football team, but they're very few and far between. And so I think that's a great example of somebody not knowing their audience and not paying attention or not caring, which I think is disrespectful to the crowd. But knowing your audience, and making sure that if you're going to do that, that it feels right. It feels like it's the right time, the right place, the right moment to change up what you're going to do and do something else. So yeah, I think what you said there is really important. So, and in regards to that, whether it's a small group that is there to hear you or a larger group, how do we keep our audience engaged so that you don't feel like they're not aware of what you're doing or not paying attention?
Well, there's different approaches to this from different band leaders. I prefer to speak to my audience and to explain why I've chosen certain songs or why certain songs of mine are named how they are. Most of them are a play on words of some kind. But I prefer to engage the audience verbally as well as musically.
Right. As do I, and I try to, in the band that I lead, Bonafide, we don't have a lot of originals, and so they're arranged standards in most all the tunes in the book, and so I try to give them like a little historical background on the composer, the arranger, the tune itself, and maybe the style of the tune, why we like it, who it's going to feature, if there's different people being featured.
Yeah. I do the same with my quartet.
Yeah, and so just try to engage them so that you kind of set them up so that they're now knowing, okay, now I have this information and now I know what I'm about to hear.
Well, one thing that I've done with my quartet over the last year is there have been a couple months where we featured the music of one artist in particular.
Sure.
So we did last year in just November, December, we did a Miles Davis night, just the music of Miles Davis. Another night we did mostly the music of Thelonious Monk. So I was able to talk a little bit about those musicians and composers.
A little more in depth as you go throughout the night, because it's all about them.
Right, and also try to play in their style a little bit for the entertainment and because I love to do that too. But
it's a challenge for us as players to do.
Yes, there are. But there are also cats that don't want to talk to audiences, and that's cool too. And they might be playing more, avant-garde music, where it's not appropriate to have a conversation with the audience. So knowing your audience and maybe your stage mannerisms matching the music.
Sure, and maybe in those situations where the music doesn't necessarily lend itself to having that much audience, interaction with you talking.
Right, storytelling.
Yeah, maybe storytelling with your playing, but maybe hey, let's not turn around and all face each other. Let's make sure that we're, still presenting the music to our audience, and hopefully that will help engage them. Trying to play to them and for them instead of at them.
Right.
So trying to play, even though it may be avant-garde, and that may require a certain skill set that may be difficult, where you have to really focus on what you're doing. Still try to present it to them in a way that feels welcoming, I guess, so they can kind of grab onto it.
I think it's a little easier for me. I'm used to speaking to audiences from one of the other bands I used to be in. Mm-hmm. So I'm more comfortable with it, but also I sing. So I sing standards, nothing really fancy, but and that is more audiences. Some audiences respond to it more than they do just improvisation.
Right.
So I think that makes my group, and not to brag, nothing like that, but makes my group maybe a little bit more accessible to the average fan.
Right. Or maybe easier for your group to connect with your audience than some other groups.
Yeah, some people listen to a singer. They hear music, but they listen.
Sure.
And it catches their ear. So again, not to brag or anything like that.
Yeah.
I've seen both.
Yeah. And one side point too that I just want to make that we didn't necessarily prepare for. I just kind of thought about this. Does the way that you talk, look, do those things affect, the audience? Say you're just a killing player, but you show up and you're just constantly talking, or you're loud, or maybe you're cussing, or maybe you're drinking a little too much on the gig, or maybe you're not dressed quite up to par for the style and what you're trying to present. There are times and places, I think, where dress can be, quite a bit different from each other.
Right.
But if you're not in those frames of mind, if you're not maybe dressed the right way or appropriately for the style or the moment, if you're, like I said, if you're maybe a little obnoxious, loud, drinking too much, or not paying attention to what you're doing, does that affect, you think, audience engagement?
I think it can. Okay. It might depend on where you are in the band. Like if it's a big band and you're in the back row, people may not see that you're wearing sneakers instead of black dress shoes.
Right.
But if you're loud and obnoxious, especially if you're making musical mistakes, they're going to hear it.
Right.
Even casual listeners,
Sure.
We tend to think of audiences as people, that are music lovers that have a little bit more education or a little bit more learned ear, but not everybody's like that.
Right.
But I think that, even if it doesn't affect the audience, it can affect the people around you, and that's not good.
Sure. Okay. And then.
Well, one other thing, I don't know if you're going to hit on this, but you had mentioned earlier maybe, say it's like really dead. Like you have 2 people left and you still have an hour to play and you need to knock off early.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Is it acceptable to pack up and take off?
No.
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 Okay, yeah.
In my opinion, you got to speak with the club owner or manager or the restaurant manager, wherever you're playing. Clear it with them. Say, hey, there's only 2 people left. They're not really into it. Would it be okay if we knocked off half an hour early? And make sure the money's still going to be there. For one thing, though, if you're the leader,
sure,
we still want our full bread, our full pay, even if we knock off early, or if there's a trade-off of some kind,
or just leave it up to the club owner to come to you and say, "Hey, you guys can go ahead and pack up. There's nobody left."
Right.
I'll still pay you, but go ahead and pack up.
And that'll happen. But you don't assume that it's okay to knock off early.
Right.
You gotta clear it with the person in charge.
Right. And that's another way is that definitely falls into the audience engagement thing for me, as far as like being respectful of even the people that are there. If there's nobody there, then maybe it's different. But if there's still a few people there, being respectful to them. So, okay. So the last thing is, now we're going to kind of flip this around, as we're now the audience. So when you go into a show of any style of music, what do you expect? You're paying money to go into a show, and you expect to get what in return?
I expect to be entertained, to hear good music from hopefully a tight group. Mm-hmm. No crashing and burning. Right. It's like we were talking about, well, if there's hardly anybody there, do you go for it, maybe do some different things? Yeah, we do, but I will not crash and burn.
Not crash and burn. Right.
No, it's not like I'm going to call some tune that nobody knows and take it at a breakneck speed that we can't handle and sound just lousy. It may be a little rough around the edges. And as an audience member, I'm fine with that, because I like us to push ourselves at least somewhat.
Right, so you can appreciate...
I'm okay with that other artists doing the same.
Right, you can appreciate them trying to push themselves, push the envelope.
Right, but I still expect to hear, professional musicians playing in a competent manner. Right. But I expect them to be at least a little engaged with the audience, to know that we're there. I mean, They are the entertainment, just like we are when we're playing.
Right.
I expect them to start on time, and I expect them to be on stage most of the night, not a 40-minute break in a 2-hour gig.
Right. Right.
So that's I think that's just common courtesy from a performer.
Right.
If I go to, a symphony, it's the same thing. If I go here to Chicago or a Cleveland Symphony, it's not going to be a 40-minute break between, during intermission.
Right. Right.
And even if the conductor, maybe say they have a guest conductor, is going to push the tempos faster than they've ever taken them when they've played this piece, and it's going to be a challenge. Well, I know they're going to be able to handle it.
Right.
So.
Right. So in a nutshell, for that one, you expect professionalism, you expect to be entertained, and you expect to be respected
as an audience,
member from who's on stage.
Right.
That they have their stuff together, and that they're prepared, and that they're going to engage with you, and they're going to put on a show for you.
Yes.
So okay. Now, as an audience member, say you go with some friends now. Let's say the first set of friends is our fellow musicians. And, like you and I go out to hear, Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. They're in town, and we go hear them. What would you expect out of me as we go? Out of somebody who's going with you to the show.
Well, since we're both musicians and we're going for a show, I would expect us to keep our conversation during the show to a minimum, so we can both enjoy the music to its fullest. I might say, "Oh, hey, I know this tune," or I love this one."
Yeah, or "Hey, that's killing."
Or I hope that Wynton takes a big solo in this or something.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't talk about work or last week's gig.
Right.
We can do that anytime. When we go to hear a show, we're going to listen to and appreciate the music.
Right. Right. And so, what if you go with some friends who aren't musicians? Does that make a difference?
It does make a little bit of a difference because...
And this is not to degrade non-musicians out there.
Not at all.
This is just to say that there's a bit of a difference.
Right. Their idea of going to a show might be different from yours. And if I don't know if you need to say anything up front, but maybe during the show is like, hey, I'm trying to listen, or... you should listen to this. This is going to be great. Or, just explain maybe concert etiquette to them.
Sure, maybe
we're going to the show. This isn't a nightclub where you can talk.
Right.
This is a show.
Right.
Like you're going to a symphony or your kid's ballet.
Right. Yeah. This is something we go to specifically for the music, and we're listening to this.
Right.
And we're not socializing necessarily.
Right. And if it's a jazz show, you might also want to just tell them, hey, it's okay to clap and applaud after a solo. That something you really like. You maybe want to whoop it up a little bit.
Sure.
Or it's something to really knock your socks off.
Right.
And by the same token, if you're taking your friends or you're going with friends to see the Cleveland Symphony or a chamber group, tell them not to applaud between movements.
Right.
And not to hoop and holler it up.
Right. Just kind of educate them a little bit. Hey, this is what should go on, and hopefully if they're friends of yours, and they know, kind of how to do that. But again, help them out. Them out. So. But
I think it's also, and I studied for several years to be a music educator. So being a teacher, I'm not a teacher, but being a teacher is still a little in me. So I might say to my friends if they're playing the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra is going to play a night of Duke Ellington. Right. Maybe explain a little bit about, this piece is going to have this killer trumpet solo in it because Cat Williams always did this solo, so listen for that.
Right, yeah. So maybe set them up.
That's a good way to put it, setting them up a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, again, and again, to kind of wrap this segment up, a lot of this stuff may seem to you who's watching this as common knowledge, but I think that, we've kind of lost some of that over the years, both as players and as audience members. I think that it's something that we need to pay more attention to. But I think the underlining points of all these different scenarios and topics are be professional, know your audience, know your surroundings, know what's going on, and if you're unprepared when you show up because it's a last minute thing that you were called to do. Ask questions. You'd rather be a little annoying by asking too many questions at first, so that way you can be prepared by the time the downbeat is ready to go, and so that you can put on a good show. And as a performer, like you said, be prepared. Rehearse if you need to rehearse. Practice what you need to practice. I've been on jobs where I've asked people where I'm running the band and I've said, hey, we didn't have time to rehearse this tune. There's only a couple spots where we really need to look at, make sure everybody looks at that, and then you show up and you kind of realize, okay, they didn't really look at that. So if you're asked, just be professional, right?
Right.
Just be prepared for everything you can be, and it's very difficult. You can't always be prepared. It's impossible. But do your best to have that mindset so that when you're ready to, when the phone rings, you're ready to go. And consequently, the phone will ring more often.
Right.
If you show those things.
Right. Yeah. It's. I would say that we are we are used to keeping our eyes and ears open on a bandstand. And when you're filling in for somebody else in a band you're not very familiar with, it's even more important to do that. And in fact, I've subbed for 2 players in 2 different bands the last 2 Saturday nights. Very different settings. One was a big band, one was a salsa band. And I knew some of the cats around me, but still, I was like trying to be hyper alert to be aware of what was going on. And it's not always easy. It really depends on the stage. And hopefully you have somebody there to help you. But yeah, there's no harm in asking questions. You should never be afraid.
Right. And maybe also don't take yourself too seriously.
Right.
We're performers. Those of us who do this, we're performers. And the people, as we said, as an audience member, what do you want? You want to be entertained. So we need to make sure that we're entertaining and be careful not to take yourself too seriously. It can cause trouble. It can get you in trouble by putting you in situations where you show up to a gig and there's not a lot of people there, and that's what you always do. But just make sure that you're aware again of your surroundings.
Yes.
I want to thank Tim. Thanks so much for talking to me tonight. And we have a couple more of these coming up scheduled. Also, I didn't mention at the top that I wanted to mention that these will be coming out the second week of every month, hopefully, time permitting. When you see this, realize that the second week of June there should be another one. And that one is actually already scheduled. I'm going to have a good friend of mine named Chris Hovind on. Chris writes CD reviews and concert reviews at allaboutjazz.com. He's written liner notes for Crisscross. He's written up shows for Downbeat Jazz Magazine. And he's also a very talented and well-known jazz photographer. And him and I are going to be talking about recorded music, in particular jazz, and really the recordings themselves, what's different now versus 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and what makes a great recording great. Is it just the players, or does it have anything to do with the recording itself? So thanks so much for watching. We appreciate it, and I hope to see you next month.